You're listening to the Wedding Biz Network, the voice of the creative entrepreneur. Hey everyone, it's Andy Kushner with the Wedding Biz, and today's episode is brought to you by Party Slate, the first website designed specifically for event professionals and venues. And on the Wedding Biz, I conduct in-depth and revealing interviews of icons and those who I feel are the next generation icons of the weddings and event industry. And this is all to provide you with education and inspiration. And I have a special message before I introduce today's special guest. The Wedding Biz has been my passion project for over 3 years now, hard to believe. And I've been so driven to support this industry in any way I can and to help your growth in it by bringing you insights from our industry leaders. And the response has been phenomenal. Thank you so much for all you have done to continue to listen in, share, and support the show. And as the show has grown, so have the opportunities to bring you this great content. However, those opportunities do come at a financial cost. So the best way for me to keep maximizing the potential of the show and not charge a membership fee is to ask you to become a patron at a nominal cost. Please go to theweddingbiz.com and you will see a button at the top that says Become a Patron, and that's where you can sign up. There's also a link in the show notes, and not only will you be supporting the show, but you'll also be securing your access to solid, exclusive future content. So, last week's episode was Morgan Childs, an expert in planning and designing micro-weddings, and her interview is all about that. Really interesting. Obviously, the timing is really apropos. And so now, today's guest is Caleb Jordan Lee, a brilliant filmmaker, and his company is called East West Production. They are a full-service event filmmaking company with award-winning coverage. Caleb's work has been showcased in publications such as People Magazine, particularly for shooting Nick Jonas and Priyanka Chopra's wedding, and also Vogue, Martha Stewart Weddings, Brides Magazine, and Harpers Bazaar, which named Caleb one of the world's top filmmakers. Caleb has traveled throughout Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean, and his story is really inspirational. It's just incredible what he's accomplished at such a relatively young age. So enjoy my conversation with Caleb Jordan Lee. Caleb, man, I've been really looking forward to this, to have you on the show. This is great that we can do this.
Me as well, Andy. This has been such an influential podcast in our industry, and just the opportunity to be able to have a conversation with you for the first time online. It's just so exciting, and I just cannot wait to what we get into today.
Oh, man. Well, thanks. I hope it doesn't disappoint. A lot of pressure there on me. No, but I, when I think about you, Caleb, first of all, it's interesting that I don't know if you grew up in Charlottesville. I know you've been there for a while. And yet you're worldwide. You're traveling all over the place. Did you grow up in Charlottesville?
A little bit south. So I live in a town area called Forest, which is about an hour south of Charlottesville. But we both rest right along those Blue Ridge Mountains.
Yeah.
And yes, this is where I grew up. And it's a place that as I get older and travel more, the more I resonate with where I grew up and just long to be back in this area. So I have had roots here for 27 years. And especially during a crazy year like this, I find myself wanting to come back even more. So it's definitely an amazing place to grow up. It might not be the easiest place to launch a business from for worldwide travel by any means, but it's definitely the place that made me who I am and the place where I learned how to run a business and taught me the fundamentals. So I have such a special place for it in my heart.
What do you think it is about growing up in Charlottesville that helped form you, the way that, like you say, the way you are today?
Absolutely. I mean, for me, I was really formed just from family values. I'm one of 5 kids.
Okay.
And so second to youngest. So for me to be able to look up to older siblings while I grew up and just learn from their mistakes and just to have the incredible wisdom of just family and friends around this area was so important for me and gave me the confidence to launch my business at such a young age. Because it was really scary at the beginning. And so just to have just a place that was just an incredible safety net for me to take risk was so important during the early years. And everyone around here has just been so incredibly supportive and honestly just shaped who I've become today.
Yeah, I feel like you're talking, I mean, also before we hit the record button, the way you were talking about home is that it sounds like it's extremely grounding for you to be there.
Agreed. That's definitely the right word.
Yeah, that's it. Well, so when you were a kid, I mean, soon we'll come to when you started your business, which fascinates me because I guess you were like 17 or 18 or something like that.
16 was when I launched my LLC back in the day.
That's great. Well, but how did you get there? Did you watch a ton of movies and films? I mean, did you have you must have had a passion early for what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely did have a passion for it. Well, my passion for travel came first. And there's something about traveling that always wants to make you pull out the camera. And so it just forced me into these environments that I really could learn storytelling.
Like, where did you travel?
The very first place I ever shot video was actually up in the Himalayas of Nepal.
Whoa, come on.
It's crazy. So I was up there for 3 months. My background was I did a lot of work with charities. And so when I talked to charities, I was like, what's the most useful thing to you guys? They would always tell me, well, we need more photos and nobody shoots video. If you can learn to shoot video, we would love that. And so I took it on myself I had a small little landscaping business at the time, and I sold off all my equipment and just bought cameras with it because I was like, I'm really, really excited about just to learn this craft and to be able to learn these new skills. And for me, when I first started, I was sent on this 3-month project into Nepal to kind of tell the story of these orphans up in the Himalayas of Nepal. They had not ever seen a white person like me before and were incredibly shy in front of the camera and barely spoke English. But for me, it just taught me these basics of storytelling, and it's about emotion and the way you make people feel. And so when I got back to Virginia, I continued to make more videos for charities, travel to Guatemala, Nicaragua, St. Vincent throughout the next year. And then at the end of that process, I was like, I want to keep telling stories, but charities don't quite pay the bills. And so I realized I have to turn this into a business somehow, and because I have to find a way to make this sustainable. And I picked weddings because I remember watching wedding videos at the time and just realizing wedding photographers are capturing so many incredible images and just at the peak of their game. But I saw video as this is an industry that has miles to go. And it was just so exciting. I'm like, maybe this is an industry that I can actually benefit and help and bring another perspective to. And so I got into that instead of the commercial field because I really felt like I could make wedding films better. And 10 years later, I love it as much as the day I started.
You're saying during high school, right? I mean, most people at 16 are either in 10th or 11th grade.
Right.
Did you have role models for this? How did you even think of doing this?
I had a slightly alternative education. I was homeschooled throughout most of my upbringing, which is, in my opinion, great, especially if you take advantage of it. So it allowed me to get really ahead in school. So when I started my business, I was actually already in college at the time. And so it just allowed me the freedom to make decisions when I felt them more. And so for me, when I first went to Nepal on that first trip, I had to go talk to all my professors and be like, hi, can I leave for the next 2 months at the end of the semester? And fortunately, they're like, you have the grades, take the test, you're good to go. And so everything just fell into place. So they gave me that piece and I'm like, I'm doing the right thing. And so I was only able to do it because of that upbringing that taught me that, hey, you're self-educated in a lot of ways. You find out as much on Google as you do in some of the textbooks. And so it really the good thing about my upbringing is it allowed me to be a self-learner. And I've always had this confidence that, hey, if I don't know something with enough research, I can figure it out. And so I decided eventually to put that into filmmaking and really tout myself as much as I could in that industry.
Well, when you made that decision to start in the wedding industry, which I think is a really astute decision at that time, how did you break into weddings? Like, how did you get your first weddings? Did you also come up with a whole marketing plan? And I bet you did, didn't you?
Any plan I had, I'm sure would have fallen short, just because I didn't understand the market fully. But like I said, what I did understand is what I would want to see as a client.
Okay.
And I remember a lot of films back in the day. They were, camera at the back of the church, Celine Dion soundtrack. It wasn't something you would want to watch over and over again. Yeah. So I was lucky enough when I launched my business. A month later, my sister was getting married. And so my very first wedding I ever shot was for a family member. Okay. And so I was able to put all this energy into this family member's wedding. And I was so lucky because I put it online and a bunch of these DC wedding planners saw it and were like, hi, we would love to use you for upcoming events. Can you reach out? And I wasn't ready for my business to grow. I mean, I was 16 at the time, and really just trying to take a few clients a year. But literally the next year of my business, I had 40 clients.
What? Wait, Caleb, and you're finishing school at the same time.
Right. That was exactly it. So it was just a wild transition to be thrust into this world of just traveling for weddings. I mean, a 16-year-old can't even rent hotel rooms and definitely can't rent cars.
Right. Can't rent a car. Right. I was just thinking.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just an incredible time of growth and just figuring out the fundamentals of business and hiring second shooters who were a decade older than me, who had the experience to be able to do some of the things I couldn't.
Yeah.
But really, I learned so much from incredible wedding photographers. That's really what's launched my career throughout the years. It's latching on to people who are just so much wiser than I am and have just taught me so much about business. And it really just comes down to relationships. And so fortunately, I was able to realize that pretty early on and just really, really invest as much as I could into the markets I was in, whether that was in Charlottesville or DC or Charleston, South Carolina. Those were kind of my core places where I put all my energy into making relationships with the planners in those markets. And I realized planners were going to be the path for me to success.
Yeah.
That small, like going to a wedding for 6 hours and that short relationship wasn't what I wanted to build with people. I really resonated when I could spend a weekend with a family and really know who all the key players were and really try to make the vendors look good as possible and get behind the scenes footage of them. So I just realized that if I really want to do this with longevity, I'm going to have to focus on relationships, and planners kind of were my intro into the wedding world. And they're the ones who have lifted me up from my spot here in Virginia.
You know, it's funny you talk about even doing shots for the vendors or creative partners, I like to call them. It's funny. I remember really early noticing that too for my bands. And I would set up shots for the photographer and the videographer. Like I'd go run up to him. I say, hey, listen, why don't you come, over here, stage right. And I'm going to, get some people on stage, and I, set stuff up and get people to wave to the cameras. I remember saying, hey, everyone wave to the camera. I would just interrupt in the middle of a song. Right. But it's like those shots I would see later were, huge, important shots for the night.
It's about having fun. Who wants to be at a reception where it doesn't look like the guests are having a good time? And if you and your band are there, we know people are going to have a good time. So the point is, if you get hired onto a wedding, you immediately all become one big company.
Yes.
If I can step in and help set a table, or if I can help people move equipment, you're not better than anything. We're all just servants trying to help the client's day go as smooth as possible and try to make each other look good as possible. So that's really what's the kind of key to success in this industry. You got to look at these 20-year windows and say, how can I help everyone succeed? Because there is room for everyone, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, it really is a team. It's definitely a team. So what is your process? I guess most of the time I know that you're working with planners. How does it tend to go, on a general basis?
Well, I've never been the kind to market my business. I don't think I've ever had to spend many advertising dollars because it really is about relationships for me. Fortunately, I only do about 15 to 20 events max per year. So all that means is I have to have 15 to 20 planners who think I'm right for one of their special clients that year. And so For me, that's really what I focus on. So if a planner brings someone to me, they typically know I'm going to be the right fit for their style and their budget, and really just a good fit for the vendor team. Because, you're not a good fit for everyone. And you got to realize that. And so I remember when I first started in weddings, so much of my core business was built on doing Indian weddings, which I love. But they are also exhausting and quite an experience. You'll put 20 to 22 hours per wedding day for like 3 to 4 days of events.
Wow.
So yeah, and I realized the sustainability of that is going to be me burning out in 5 years. And so I realized I can only do, let's say, 2 to 3 of those kinds of events per year. And just kind of knowing yourself and knowing your limits is really, really important, I think, in that scope.
So you learned to say no then. You apparently turned down work.
Definitely. Fortunately, I had to learn that pretty quickly on. Even that first year shooting 40 weddings was well beyond my ability. So I immediately had to start hiring freelancers to help me and my team. And it's just been growth. But then you kind of have to look back and say, what kind of business do I want to grow? Do I want to be someone with 10 to 20 teams headed out every weekend, capturing multiple events? Or do I want to be an artist? And for me, it was really about that. I'd rather charge more, but give someone the very best experience. And so that's what I focus on. I'm not right for everyone, but for the clients I am right for, I really try to provide an exceptional experience to them and their vendor team. So if I just have 15 people a year, I have to make sure it's a perfect day. And that's what I would rather focus my energy on.
Well, so do you have a process with the planners by which you learn about the clients? Do they tend to let you talk to the clients ahead of time? How does that go so that you really get to understand who they are?
I think every planner is a bit different. And the good thing is to just trust your planners to work with their process. So some of my New York planners, I'll have maybe one conversation with the clients going into the wedding day and get all the other important details from them. And then you really just have to make use of the time on the wedding weekend to just figure out for yourself who are the most important people. What music are they playing at the reception? Who seems to be the people they're resonating with the most? Those are the people who belong in the video, you know? So kind of you can work with a planner that way. Other planners are really hands-on. They're like, hey, the bride is obsessed with your work. They want to talk to you as much as possible. They want you to have multiple meetings beforehand. That happens. I'll have sometimes 4 to 5 calls with a client going into a weekend because we're doing such extensive events. They want to make sure that they're hiring the right person with the right team. And so I'm happy to work either way, but it's really about catering that to the planners that you're working with.
Yeah, so you must have a style also about the way you present yourself so that, I mean, like you said earlier, and I think a lot of people coming up in the industry need to understand that not necessarily networking, but like you said, I like relationship building, right? Which is even kind of a deeper level than networking is probably at least 50% of the whole deal, right? Not just having the talent.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, that's definitely what I've found from my experience in the past 10 years. And it's taken me to places I could have never marketed my way to.
Can you tell me a story, Caleb, of maybe a couple of some favorite weddings that you can think of? Just if you could help kind of describe your process for how you've learned about these people, and maybe it was just on site, like at the rehearsal dinner or something like that, and just, you know, a particular favorite one of yours, if you can kind of help give us an idea.
I'd love to. Obviously, what we specialize in is non-disclosure events. So unfortunately, as the years go on, I'm able to talk less and less about my incredible clients.
Right.
But there are definitely like standout events that I've done throughout the years. I remember my first experience in really doing a destination wedding came probably 7 years ago. And I had the opportunity to go to Santorini, Greece with a client.
Oh man, that's a place I want to go.
Yeah. And so it really shaped me because the bride, I didn't know what I was getting into per se. I was just like, I'm there for you. Whatever you want. I want to make the best possible video. And she's like, well, we're going to go sailing one night and then we're going to have a family dinner at this location. And then if you want to explore the town for a day, it was just like, and by the time it was done, it was like 5 days of events.
Wow.
But what I found was when I got back into my editing studio, I had all this incredible material. And so for me 7 years ago, I was like, my life becomes so much easier and my work feels so much more fulfilling when I take on these destination weddings. So I resonated with those kind of clients who really want to make you a part of their family throughout the wedding weekend and just build you into as many of their events as possible. And so throughout the years, we've been able to work for so many incredible clients. I did one last year in Spain, in Mallorca. And so this client really love to party. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah.
And you'll have such different clients. We'll have very reserved clients. We'll have clients who are just there to party. These clients flew in DJs from all around the world. There was never not music playing.
Wow.
We were going on cruises throughout the ocean. We were in pool rooftops. There were after parties that went to about 4 a.m. every night. There's experiences like that are just so fun for me and my team to try to keep up with the client's energy. And fortunately, it's just such a fun party. It's hard not to have a good time with it. And then even a couple years ago, one of the most challenging events I've ever been able to do, but also one I'm probably the most proud of, was when we got the call to do Nick Jonas and Priyanka Chopra's wedding.
Yes. Congratulations on that. I read about that.
It was a wild experience. And I mean, I'm sure Jose's spoken into that as well.
Yes,
that
he did.
He got the call 2 weeks out.
Right.
I got the call 1 week out.
What? 1 week? Come on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So through Jose.
Yeah.
So he was the one who connected me with the clients and thought I would be a good fit for the event. And what was so remarkable is just really testing your business limits. What can you really do? And with 3 days and not sleeping, and because it takes 3 days to get just visas just to even work there.
Geez.
And so it really gave me 2 days of time to complete these 40-page contracts and build a team of 5 people to fly over there. And everything was going to People magazine. So we had to bring a crew to live edit everything, because they're 13 hours ahead of us in New York, and they needed everything on the night of the reception. So just the wherewithal to be able to deliver.
I can't imagine.
It's so stressful, but it's also, my goodness, when you do it, it's so fulfilling.
But the adrenaline, the excitement.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think part of it was just being able to just trust that vendor team. And me and Jose have worked together so many times throughout the years that it was just like, hey, I know if we're in this together, we can really kill it and make the very best experience for these clients. And fortunately, everything turned out great. And it's become some of our most iconic work by just being ready to say yes. And so by saying no, a lot of times you allow yourself the opportunity to say yes to the right clients.
Right.
And unfortunately, that was that scenario on that weekend.
Yeah, and I remember in the interview I had, one of the interviews with Jose, I think it was the last one. Anyway, he talked about this wedding, and he mentioned that with Nick Jonas and Priyanka, obviously with what they both do in the respective industries, they understand how to also set shots up for you, which I think rarely does a couple even think about that.
So rare.
But Jose was telling me, about moments when like, I think if I remember correctly, he said at one point, Nick said, or it was Priyanka said, hey, Jose, come here. I want you to catch this, because they knew that there was something happening here that was really, something that should be captured, and the way they dress and the way the angles, I mean, all of it, right? That must have been really nice for you.
100%. I mean, everything we captured for them was not just experienced on the wedding day, but that footage has been in multiple documentaries, and she has books coming out, and there's just so many moments throughout that weekend that I think they knew this is like this turning page moment in our lives where we're no longer two, we're one. And we want as much documentation of this life-changing weekend for us and our guests. And so no moment was unimportant to them throughout that weekend.
Well, and they're public figures and they know it.
Absolutely. They know their best angles. They
Right.
know how they look good. They know when they look natural. They know when they look fake. So it's an incredible client because, we were working at 5 times the normal speed with getting portraits just because they know every single angle to turn.
Right.
And the honest part of it is they're a great match. Their energy is so similar and they're just so in love. So there was never a moment where our cameras weren't on them where they weren't just doing something incredible. They're just so in love and always just had these incredible glances throughout the day. And I remember that moment of her deciding to walk down the aisle with that 70+ foot train.
Yeah.
And just for us, I remember when we arrived, we were able to scout and just talk about what that entrance was going to look like. And I remember talking with Jose about how do we make this the most epic entrance, and there's so many photographers and videographers, how do we make this all about them and not have these photographers running around?
Right.
And so we decided we were going to put this drone way, way up in the sky. But when I heard this idea that there's going to be this massive train, I was like, what could be more iconic than you've seen from above? Just the scale and size of this. And fortunately, that's become one of the most iconic images of that weekend, is just her walking out of that building with this massive train leading her down the aisle with like 5 people carrying the train. And we didn't know how huge that would be. And it kind of became iconic from the weekend. And so it's just about preparing as much and working as a team to try to make every single moment count. And with a client like that, there's so many incredible moments that you always have to be on your A game. And fortunately, that's what we trained to do. And thankfully, that weekend was such a big success. And we're just so grateful that we had that incredible opportunity.
If you are an event planner, venue, caterer, photographer, or any other industry professional, you really should be aware of and using the Party Slate marketing platform. And I want to say, I only work with sponsors whose product or service I'm either fully aware of or even use myself. So you can create a free profile that can act as a photo-rich portfolio, or Party Slate has additional membership options available. And if you're planning or involved with an event, from weddings to fundraisers to baby showers and really everything in between, you should use Party Slate to get inspired. Save your favorite ideas and contact top professionals to help create your dream event. New photos from real events are uploaded to Party Slate daily, and their editorial team publishes articles that highlight the latest trends and planning tips. It is a really great site. You've got to visit partyslate.com to get started. And again, that's partyslate.com. A little bit earlier, you were talking about editing yourself. Are you doing most of the editing?
Some. So I have a team. I have full-time editors. So what they help to do is bring my vision to life.
Yeah.
And they're also so skilled on their own set. And so what I do is I like to lay out the story. So I was there throughout the weekend. While I'm shooting, I already am seeing the story.
Okay.
And so once I get back into the office, we go in, we cut all the very best moments, and then I take those and I write out the story on a timeline. And then I say, these are the songs, and I'll put them kind of to the backdrop of the timeline. From there, my editors fill in all the blanks. And then at the end, what I make sure of is I'm the one color grading, because that kind of soft film-like light that our work is known for, it's hard to train people. It's all about experience. It's about the 10,000 images you've seen that you resonate with, and to know how to handle every single lighting scenario. So if that's kind of that secret sauce at the end that I can't hand off to someone else. And so that's part of the reason we only take a few clients a year, is because I want to make sure that from the very initial interaction with the client, from that very first email to the very final delivery, that the clients are interacting with me throughout the whole process. So that's part of keeping your team small, so you can give the clients the very best experience.
Yes.
And they're really paying for that experience of you at our price point.
Well, and it's interesting to hear you talk about how you are thinking storyline, and that you need to, like you say, you need to communicate that to your editors. Because, I mean, I know that, with like movies, for example, I mean, one editor can give it a completely different vibe than another editor. And so I wondered how much control you had out of that. So it doesn't surprise me that you're so intimately involved with it. Also, I wonder about your commercial work. Like, I've seen that you've done work for brands like H&M, venues like Harpers Resorts, Lynn Easton's Pippin Hill Farm. You have so much to say in such a short period of time, even sometimes less than a minute, like the one I saw on H&M. Like, you've got to express their brand in an emotionally evocative way. The pressure, I can't imagine that. How do you approach that kind of work?
Yeah, I mean, every experience that we have is a learning experience. And fortunately, you just build on your past knowledge. And every time I shoot, I feel like I become a better filmmaker and know how to better handle talent. But why I resonated with getting into that hospitality market is because of weddings. I realized my favorite part of a wedding is being able to experience properties. And if you can take kind of those wide-eyed approaches to like your first time at a property and translate that into a commercial for a property of what it's like to arrive at a property for the first time. What do you smell? What do you sense? What do you see? What drink is put into your hand? All of those really senses. If you can translate that into video, you can get hired for so many hotels, because that's really what they want to translate. And so that's kind of why we fell into that market as well, is because just we resonate with the ability to experience places for the first time, and just kind of built on our knowledge from weddings that translated into that hospitality market, because the two kind of go hand in hand.
What percentage of your business is weddings versus the hospitality and commercial?
It's about a 20% spread for me with hospitality clients. I'll typically take on about 5 hotels throughout the year. So I work really closely with Relais and Chateau hotels. So anytime they have a new property that they're adding to their collection of hotels, which are all privately owned, they'll try to connect me with the owner. And if it's a good fit, we'll move forward and fly out to their location and spend typically 4 to 5 days on site, just capturing absolutely everything. So whether that's the food or the pools or the resort activities, just every inch of the property we capture, and try to translate that, like you said, into a 1-minute product or very, very short little snippets. That's a real challenge, because there's so many amazing parts to each property.
Oh, yeah.
But it's such a fulfilling thing. And for me, it's kind of been the way I've grown up now. It's like I've been able to be raised by the world, in the strange sense that I've been able to travel to so many places that I can't think of how I would have done that with another career, apart from maybe like flight attendant or pilot.
Yeah.
Like we've really gotten to travel the world, and it's such an amazing thing that makes you such a more rounded person. So it's really set the stage for us moving forward in everything that we do.
It's related to this too. I get, in terms of your understanding how to express a brand in such a short period of time. I've seen your reel on your 2020 reel on the website, and I've watched some of the individual wedding videos that you've done that, I mean, they're so stunning, and they're approximately 4 or 5 minute summary videos. And so I imagine you're viewing it in a similar way as you do with the hospitality, right? As far as how can you, in such a short period of time, and you have hours and hours and hours and hours of footage to choose from.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, trying to put together a reel of your work is probably the hardest thing you can do at the end of a year.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's really about the emotions of what I might have a more beautiful shot, but if it doesn't make you feel something, it's not worth putting into a reel. So it's really just guided by the emotions of, hey, how does this shot make me feel? And does that make me feel the same way as the very next shot I put in with it? Like there's like this invisible thread of emotions that can run through one of those reels.
Yeah.
that amazingly connects all these clients together. And that's the really fun part for us, is trying to figure out that puzzle, putting all those little tiny parts into one reel that tells a linear story. I love it.
What about the challenges? What are some of the hardest aspects of what you do in order to pull it off the way you do? What's the rough side of this business for you?
When I first got into it, the industry was a little bit different. And I thought it was my job to tell this epic story, make weddings sometimes more than they actually were. And I've gone away from that for the past 7-8 years, and to really just focusing on, hey, when you're working with the very best team, you got to trust the clients that they're making the moments happen the way that they want them to be. Mm-hmm. And so for us, it's about using just the live moments and making that the story. No voiceovers, no forced interviews for us. That's just our style. Because what I want the clients to be able to look back at the weekend and say, that's what my wedding felt like. I don't want it to feel like this epic trailer for a movie if they didn't have that. Mm-hmm. And some clients do. They want it to feel like a party. So it's my job to make it feel like a party. And some people are all about the emotions. And the most important part is when the bride and groom see each other for the first time coming down the aisle. Right. And so that is what I should allocate the most amount of time to, and build the story up to that moment. So the music peaks at that moment, and the storylines all lead towards the moments that they care most about. And that's really the challenge with storytelling that we're always getting better with every day. But what that translates into is clients don't even know that you're there. If you're giving direction, you're working with the photographer to try to help find the very best light for them, or set up a great portrait of the two of them. But during live events like the ceremony and the reception, I don't want to be center stage. I don't want to be taking away any of that energy from the guest and what they're experiencing throughout the weekend, or to make them feel like they're in a movie. And so they should realize we're there when they watch the video and see all these amazing moments. So we've kind of transitioned into really focusing on showing off the planner's work the very best, and using the client's very incredible taste to shape the story. And that's become what makes our work so special, is to really make something huge from just those intimate moments that they choose to focus on throughout the weekend.
Have you had any near disasters? I got to tell you a quick one. When I first performed in the DC area, I had bands when I was a teenager, like you. I mean, I started a business when I was 15, 16. And one of my first performances in DC, I was in my mid-20s, and I had a friend film it. And he turns out the battery had gone dead. He didn't realize it. He'll never let that happen again. But have you had any near disasters, at a major event that you've had to deal with?
I'm trying to think at that scale. I don't believe, knock on wood, we've never had an experience where we've had any traumatic event happen, fortunately, for us and our clients. I'll tell you what, every time I take my drone up in the air, I say a little prayer. Yeah. That is the most stressful part of a wedding experience for me, because you're putting these blades up into the air and hoping they come back in one piece every time. Yeah, right. For us, there's been plenty of experiences, not even wedding related, but where we're flying and it says that 10% battery and you better get it home quick before it dies out on you. Moments like that have been the most stressful in my career. But fortunately for us, I probably can tell you after this interview, plenty of things will come to mind. But in this moment, I can't think of any moments that have been just incredibly dramatic that have turned the wedding dream into a disaster. Thank goodness.
Sure. Well, what about the business aspect of this? I mean, I like, as you know from the interviews, I like to really explore how people balance art with business. I mean, I personally, especially in my younger days, really struggled with that. All I wanted to do was be the creative. And I learned really quickly, you can't take your eye off the ball of the business and how critical that is. And I remember some people, Caleb, like Brian Raffinelli, David Stark. I remember they really opened my eyes. I mean, I learned a lot through these interviews myself. And I'll never forget, they both in different ways talked about how running the business is a creative act in of itself. If you look at it that way, it can be enjoyable. And they both enjoy it. And that, I was like, what? You really enjoy the business side? Man, I got to relook at it. How do you view and deal with that? Because obviously you have a very successful business.
Like you said, I mean, you learn from others. And the wedding and event industry is industry into its own. Fortunately, we live in an industry that we're all trying to lift each other up. Yeah. So I've been able to learn from very generous friends, just incredible photographers and planners who have shared what works best for them, which have really shaped contracts and the way I take on clients. I mean, I remember definitely in my early years, I'd get requests for massive weddings, and I'd have a 6-hour wedding on the books, and I couldn't say yes to this huge opportunity. And it took me a lot of years to really realize that it's okay to have your schedule clear, even though it's more stressful leading into the next year. So many of my most massive events that we've captured have come within 2 months, 3 months out.
But isn't that stressful as hell?
It's so stressful. Yeah. Yeah. And it's stressful because I have employees and I have a team that I'm taking care of. And so it's my guarantee to them that I'm going to provide them work. Fortunately, everything has gone just incredibly until 2020. And I think we all know kind of all the rules have changed this year. And it's one of those years where I had 20 events this season. Fortunately, several of those were before March, but all the remaining 15 of my clients decided to postpone their events or cancel. And this has been the first time where I've had an open schedule. And it's good. To be honest, I think most of us in this industry would say we needed to breathe a little bit. But I'll tell you what I miss the most with all of this is just getting to spend time with the wedding family that we're in, being able to attend events like Engage and just be encouraged by each other and build that community. So it's really important to, as you run your business, to look out for other people's business because it'll matter a lot. So I'm sure we've all been doing this, but just checking in on our friends, say, hey, how you doing? Do you have any jobs? Can I refer you for this? Anything at all, just to try to help everyone get through this crazy time. So the way I run my business is obviously to look out for me and my employees first, to make sure that we're charging the rates that we need to make sure that when pandemics happen, we can get through the storm.
Right.
Because nothing is guaranteed. And fortunately for me, like throughout the years, I've been doing steps like I started investing in the stock market back when I started my business. And so that's been my hobby. And throughout the years, it's become a huge income for me. And so fortunately, I make more from the stock market than I do from my wedding business.
Geez.
And that gets us through years like this. But you just have to be prepared. And so being a business owner is obviously the most stressful choice you can make in life, apart from probably having kids, because you kind of take this commitment with you and your team to bring them to the next year every season. But fortunately, if you surround yourself with the best people, they can help you get through the very hardest of times. And that's definitely what we've learned throughout this crazy, crazy year.
What about your strategy for social media? How do you, I mean, it's something I struggle with. I just, I'm from another generation and I struggle to have a true interest in it. How are you dealing with it?
I feel like I'm from another generation now that TikTok has come into the scene.
Oh.
I'll tell you what, there's always something new. And it's really a question of how much energy do you want to spend on something and what will be what harvest will you reap from that energy? For me, where I've always invested the most amount of my time online would be Instagram. But at the same time, what I think is important for me and my clients is that because so many of them require discretion and privacy, not to share too much. And so for me, what I'll do from events is, obviously I have some events I can't share anything, but from the events I am allowed to share from, I kind of just share glimpses. I want to share the very best moments and not have people every time they see something pop up, they're like, oh, this guy again. I want to make sure that like people's impression of your business is really what you put out there. That's all they know. And so for me, it's important that we are sharing just little glimpses so they can kind of see just the magic of the weekend, but not overwhelm them with just too much content. So they kind of get sick of your brand. What's more important than that, I think, on social media is to make sure that everyone who was there that weekend who didn't have the ability to capture, that you're giving them those materials, that the florist, that the planner, that the bands, that every single vendor on that team has material from you the day after. I mean, if you can turn around materials within 24 hours, that's been a huge transition for our business since 2017 as we started sharing stories with Instagram and just making like little 1-minute films that break up into those 15-second Instagram blocks.
And tag everybody, right?
Exactly. Tag everybody, give them something to share. Because when you do that, they can trust you to be the photographer and videographer, and they can be the band, and they can be the florist, and they can be the planner. They don't have to have their camera out because they know you're going to make sure that they get what they care about most. They make sure that you capture their florals, the dinner, the fun and excitement from the dance floor. That's my job as a filmmaker, to make sure every vendor gets all these incredible materials after the weekend. So that's kind of my perspective on social media. It's not all about me, but it is about the team. And so if I'm sharing something from the wedding weekend, it's really about showcasing the vendor team and then little glimpses of the bride and groom's experience throughout the weekend.
Yeah, well, and then we're also going to recommend you. I mean, it works. It works that way.
Treating people good. Yeah.
Yeah. And just a couple more questions, especially for the filmmakers out there. In terms of the rate of change with technology, it's just, it's getting faster and faster and faster. Being able to stay relevant, relative to technology. First of all, just kind of briefly, what is the main equipment that you use? And then how do you view the constant change in technology?
For us, the technology changes way too quickly. But in the early days, it couldn't change soon enough. Mm-hmm. I mean, it took a long time before videos caught up to the resolution of photos. I hate when I look at a photographer's image and I'm like, oh, theirs looks so much better than mine.
Oh, yeah.
And for the past 3 years, there hasn't been a huge difference because fortunately, technology has finally caught up to us. So my equipment is, I use Canon cameras because I think what matters most to a bride is what her skin looks like on the wedding day. And I just think Canon has this amazing ability to capture skin tones and make people really look just soft and dreamy and the right colors. Not too blue, you just want them to feel as beautiful as they did on the day. So I want to choose equipment that makes sure that the family photos look great and not just the scenery outdoors. And so I use Canon for that reason. And then we use stabilizers, drones, tripods, really anything we need to just give us the tools to be invisible to guests and to work quickly.
Yeah, right.
If someone has a moment that's only going to happen once, if they're signing a marriage document and you only have 1 minute to capture that, you don't want to be fumbling with your tripod. You want to be able to work quickly and move and be one step ahead of them. And that's really the job that comes from experience, is just learning how to be one step ahead of everyone. So that's the idea for me when I buy equipment. I want to buy more than I need. So I'm always over prepared.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, it's all about speed. And only request I have from equipment makers that they make it lighter, because our rigs are a little too heavy.
Yeah.
We're working in these black suits throughout a wedding weekend.
Right. Morning to night.
20-pound cameras.
Yeah.
And by the end of the weekend, we've built some new muscles every single weekend. Yeah, it's a workout. Fortunately, that's a good thing in some lights, but I can't wait until all of us are able to capture a wedding weekend on the tiniest possible device, just so we're the most present as possible.
I'll bet. Well, one last question. How do you define success for you, Caleb? What does that mean to you?
I mean, I think success is really about your family, and your family doesn't just mean your born family. It means your friends and the people you work with. So I feel successful if I can bring other people up with me. If you're able to share your craft and mentor other people throughout your years of learning, I think that's a huge part of success. But also if your employees would say, this has been a fulfilling experience for me. I've learned a lot. I've experienced all these new things I never would have been. So that's kind of been the most fulfilling thing for me. And all my employees I've had throughout the past 10 years, being able to introduce someone to international travel for the first time who's never had a passport before. Yeah, I mean, things like that are just so incredibly fulfilling to me. So if I can elevate everyone through my success as my business grows, that's what I'm going to think about looking back one day. That's really what matters most, is that the rising tide lifts all boats, and that just being a part of that family. So that's a part of why I have always been a part of that engaged family and that wedding photographers, just to make sure that we all feel like a team, because as one of us succeeds, hopefully all of us succeeds, and we just make it an industry that is better for the people who come into it in the next 5 years.
Well, man, Caleb, this has been a blast getting to know you and hearing more about your story. And I'm just so impressed and inspired. So thank you for coming on to the show.
Thank you, Andy. I've had a great time getting to catch up with you. And this is definitely a experience I'm always going to remember. It's been so fun.
Thanks. Thanks for saying that. Thank you for listening to my conversation with Caleb Jordan Lee. Be sure to check out his website, which is eastwestproduction.com. And his social media handle on Instagram is Caleb Jordan Lee and East West Films. All of this is in the show notes at our website of theweddingbiz.com. If you enjoyed this episode, would love if you can share it with friends and colleagues. And also giving a great review wherever you get your podcasts from helps people find the interview and the show as well. And don't forget to listen to our follow-on segment that comes out every Wednesday called The Next Level, in which I have a guest co-host. And together we tease out some of the highlights of the interview of the week and kind of break them down into some specific tactics and tips for you to use to bring your own business to the next level. And this week's guest co-host is going to be Julie Savage of Strawberry Milk Events. Also next week, we're going to be having Siwar and Majida Bisharat of My Event Design out of Jordan, who plan and design absolutely stunning weddings and events. Be sure to tune in for that. And finally, we want to thank our sponsor again, Party Slate. Be sure to check out Party Slate at partyslate.com, and we'll catch you next week on The Wedding Biz.